Here are the headlines for Tuesday evening, August 27, 2024. Trump slams Harris flip-flop on border wall, says Kamala cowering behind anonymous staff. Kamala Harris has pledged to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build a wall at the southern United States border, which she previously called un-American during the Trump administration. According to Axios, Harris is embracing a more hawkish immigration policy as the Trump campaign spends tens of millions of dollars on attack ads over the Biden-Harris administration's failed border policy. In 2017, then-Senator Harris called Trump's border wall project a stupid use of money and committed to blocking funding for it. However, under her watch, as the so-called border czar, illegal crossings on the southern border spiked at least 140% compared to numbers seen during the Trump administration. It's a bipartisan miracle. Over 200 Bush, McCain, Romney aides endorse Harris. More than 200 former aides to George W. Bush, Senator John McCain, and Mitt Romney have expressed their full support for Vice President Kamala Harris, according to The Hill. Most of the group also endorsed President Biden in 2020. In a letter, the group reiterated their opposition to Donald Trump and support of Harris, stating that another 4 years of Trump's chaotic leadership would hurt everyday people and weaken institutions. Dear Democrats, things are not looking good. Kamala Harris's plans to lower the cost of living and fix inflation may never come to fruition, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s potential influence in the White House could lead to significant changes. With Kennedy's views on vaccines and preventative health, the country may see a shift away from pharmaceuticals like Ozempic and towards healthier eating habits. Additionally, Kennedy's ideas on economic equality and expanding Medicaid may also be impacted. The prospect of Trump declaring martial law and undermining democracy is also a concern, while Kennedy's rhetoric on loving children more than hating each other has been met with skepticism. 3/4 of Democrat voters don't know what any of Kamala Harris' policies are. A recent poll conducted by the Media Research Center found that around 75% of Democratic Party voters have no idea what Kamala Harris' positions are on key political issues. The survey discovered that over 70% of registered Democrats as well as independents were either unaware or unsure of Harris's stance on 10 different issues, including her support for a fund to bail out violent Black Lives Matter agitators and her promotion of decriminalizing illegal immigration. The poll also found that most voters get their news information from major outlets such as ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and MSNBC, which have failed to report on Harris's radical position. Ukraine faces its most difficult winter in history. Ukraine authorities have warned the population of an extremely difficult winter ahead following Monday's large-scale Russian aerial attack, which targeted energy infrastructure nationwide and impacted 15 out of 24 oblasts. Strict electricity consumption restrictions have been imposed for at least weeks throughout the country, with President Biden condemning the attacks and pledging to surge energy equipment to Ukraine to repair its systems and strengthen the resilience of Ukraine's energy grid. At least 80% of Ukraine's energy capacity is already damaged and degraded, with some reports putting the figure at 90%, and Energy Minister German Galushchenko warning that power generation will likely deteriorate to the point that this coming winter will be the hardest ever faced by Ukrainians in the country's history. Supermicro shares plunge 8% after Hindenburg shorts, claims fresh evidence of accounting manipulation. Short seller Hindenburg Research released a report alleging that Supermicrocomputer is engaged in accounting manipulation and self-dealing among family members. The semiconductor server company has seen its stock price skyrocket during the artificial intelligence bubble. According to the report, Supermicro began rehiring top executives involved in an accounting scandal just 3 months after paying $17.5 million in a Securities and Exchange Commission settlement. Former employees allege that pressure to meet quotas led salespeople to stuff the channel with distributors using partial shipments or shipping defective products around quarter end. The report also raised concerns about Supermicro's relationships with related parties, including suppliers controlled by the company's CEO Charles Lang's brothers, which have been paid $983 million in the last 3 years. I feel that a recession is going to hit the United States. Dallas, Richmond, and Philadelphia Federal Reserve surveys slump. Business surveys from the Federal Reserve Banks of Philadelphia, Dallas, and Richmond have slumped deeper into contraction, indicating that the economy is struggling to withstand the challenges it has faced since 2021. The surveys show weak capital expenditure, plunging new orders, and a decline in the number of employees. Respondents' expectations for future business activity are waning, with many expressing concern about the impact of high interest rates on consumer spending and the overall economy. Some business owners report that customers are having difficulty paying for services due to increasing personal debt and uncertainty about interest rates, while others note that political noise is disrupting business operations and discouraging long-term investments. Will $1 trillion in Treasury basis trades blow up the clearinghouses? The massive growth of basis trades in the United States Treasury market is not a sign of bearishness, but rather a leveraged trade to make a risk-free return on the difference in price between off-the-run Treasuries and Treasury future position. The size of this trade has been large for some time, with hedge funds playing a significant role. Clearinghouses at the center of repo trading have allowed trades to grow in size, as they prioritize growth over risk management. However, this can lead to liquidity disappearing during interest rate shocks, resulting in clearinghouses demanding more margin from all players and spiraling weaker market. A potential crisis may be triggered by inflationary policies announced after the presidential election, leading to rising inflation expectations following Treasuries, widening basis trades, and eventual intervention by the Federal Reserve. Did the fatty bubble pop? Eli Lilly discounts low-dose Zepbound vials by 50%. Eli Lilly & Co. is now selling vials of its weight loss drug Zepbound at a 50% or greater discount compared to the retail prices of other GLP-1s for obesity. The new price for a 2.5 meg Zepbound single-dose vial is $399, and a 5 meg dose is $549. This move has put pressure on companies exposed to GLP-1s, with shares of Novo Nordisk down about 2% and Hims & Hers Health down 8% in pre-market trading. Gold hits new record high. Bitcoin battered as Nvidia earnings loom. The Consumer Confidence Index showed a modest increase today, but underlying data revealed labor market weakness accelerating and purchasing plans declining. The poor news led to expectations of interest rate cuts shifting from 2025 to 2024. This slight easing sent gold prices to a new record high, while Treasury yields were mixed on the day with short end outperforming. Stocks were also affected, with the Nasdaq outperforming and small caps being the biggest losers, as investors await Nvidia's earnings report tomorrow. Democrats sue Georgia Election Board to block voter integrity measures. The Democratic National Committee and the Democratic Party of Georgia have filed a lawsuit against the state election board, claiming that new rules approved by the Republican-controlled state election board will lead to chaos in the November election. The new rules give local officials more power to investigate votes after Election Day and require county boards of elections to meet within 3 days of the election to compare voter ID numbers with ballots cast. Democrats argue that these rules create uncertainty and could delay certification, potentially leading to mass disenfranchisement of eligible voters. The lawsuit asks the court to clearly state that certification is mandatory and cannot be delayed by election officials. Zelensky to present victory plan to Harris and Trump in September. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky plans to present his victory plan against Russia to United States President Joe Biden in September, which also aims to pressure the White House into supporting Ukraine's military efforts. The plan includes gaining control of the Kursk region and using it as leverage for future negotiations with Moscow. Zelensky will also share his plan with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, who is running in the November election. Zelensky believes that his plan can help Ukraine secure a victory against Russia and is seeking support from Western countries to escalate their involvement in the conflict. Federal judge blocks Biden-Harris administration's parole-in-place program for illegal aliens. A federal judge in Texas blocked the Biden-Harris administration's attempts to implement a parole-in-place program that would have allowed illegal aliens who are spouses of American citizens to remain in the country legally. The decision resulted from a lawsuit filed by a coalition of 16 Republican-controlled states, led by Texas, which argued that the program bypassed Congress for political purposes. The judge issued an administrative stay on the program while he hears arguments from the plaintiffs. Dollarization and multipolarity plans top agenda for October Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa summit report. BRICS member countries may reaffirm their voluntary right to de-dollarize trade at the next summit in Russia's Kazan, possibly making progress on a BRICS currency basket. This would serve India's interests by allowing it to internationalize its rupee without being drawn into China's yuan orbit. However, India is cautious about contributing to the yuan's internationalization due to their national rivalry and concerns over financial bipolarity. If successful, this could erode the dollar's dominance and weaken United States' hegemony, promoting true financial multipolarity and advancing the interests of other BRICS member countries, including Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa. United States home prices surged to new record high in June. Home prices in America's 20 largest cities rose for the 16th consecutive month in June, increasing by 0.42% from May, according to data released today from Sanpor Logic Case-Shiller. On a year-over-year basis, prices rose 6.47%, marking the third straight monthly slowdown in price appreciation, despite reaching a new record high overall. Appeals court turns down Robert F. Kennedy Jr. bid for injunction against Google. A federal appeals court in the United States has ruled that Google did not act as a state actor when it removed videos from Robert F. Kennedy's YouTube page for allegedly violating its medical misinformation policy. The court found that Kennedy had not established that Google was acting on advice from government officials, and therefore his First Amendment rights were not implicated. Kennedy's lawyers argued that Google was acting under coercive power or significant encouragement from the government, but the court rejected this claim, stating that Kennedy had not identified any specific communications from a federal official to Google concerning the removed videos. University of California, San Diego abandons female-only STEM program after federal complaint. A civil rights activist named Mark Perry filed a federal complaint against the University of California, San Diego for offering a science, technology, engineering, and math program exclusively to female high school students, claiming it violates Title IX. The university removed some information about the program from its website following the complaint, but still lists details elsewhere. Perry believes the university should either open the program to all students or create an equivalent opportunity for male students. Artificial intelligence versus human leadership debate over plan to govern Cheyenne heats up. Artificial intelligence is being increasingly used in local government to enhance administrative tasks and reduce errors. According to Cardarelli, the consistency of artificial intelligence makes it well suited for tasks such as reviewing complying development certificates, with the city of Sydney, Australia, using artificial intelligence to improve this process. While high-risk decisions should still be made by humans, artificial intelligence can handle around 80% of local government functions, freeing up human resources for more critical tasks. The use of artificial intelligence in governance is still in its early stages and will likely take 20 to 30 years to fully unfold, but it has the potential to make government more democratic, efficient, effective, and fair. Robbie Starbuck wins again. Lois scraps some diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Robbie Starbuck, an anti-woke activist, claims he successfully pressured Lois to scale back its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives after messaging the company's executives last week. As a result, Lois has announced it will end participation in the Human Rights Campaign's Corporate Equality Index social credit system, cease donations to Pride events, and consolidate employee resource groups into one large unifying group that does not focus on race or sexual orientation. Starbucks' anti-woke crusade against corporate America has led several companies, including Tractor Supply, John Deere, Harley-Davidson, and Jack Daniel, to either eliminate or wind down their diversity, equity, and inclusion activism. Largest United States grid faces tough test as heat wave hits Midwest. The operator of the biggest power grid in the United States, PJM Interconnection, has issued hot weather and maximum generation alerts for areas it serves in the Midwest and East due to a heat wave. The alert affects 65 million people in 13 eastern and midwestern states and Washington, D.C., with cities such as Chicago, New York City, and Philadelphia expected to see temperatures rise to the mid to high 90s Fahrenheit on Tuesday and Wednesday. With demand for air conditioning spiking, PJM's grid could face a test of resilience, although no customer actions are required at this time. Israeli Defense Forces rescues hostage, father of 11, in daring Gaza tunnel raid. Israeli military forces have successfully rescued Cade Farhan al-Qadi, an Israeli Bedouin man who was held captive by Hamas for over 10 months. The 52-year-old father of 11 was taken hostage while working as a private security guard at Kibbutz Megan in southern Israel. A complex operation involving Israeli commandos and the Shin Bet National Security Agency resulted in al-Qadi being rescued alive from a tunnel in southern Gaza. The rescue was seen as a major breakthrough for Israel's military, which has been criticized for its handling of hostage situations. Republican National Committee sues Detroit, alleging city did not hire enough Republican poll watchers. The Republican National Committee is suing the Election Commission for the city of Detroit, alleging that it failed to hire enough Republican poll watchers for the state's August 6 primary election. Michigan election law requires an equal number of election inspectors from each major party in every precinct. However, the city appointed 7.5 times as many Democratic election inspectors as Republican. The complaint seeks a court order compelling the commission to adopt practices ensuring equal representation in future elections. The Powell of the powerless. The current global system is at risk of failure if the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates again, only to have to hike them once more. This has happened in previous decades, but this time it may be impossible to return to the trinity of high debt, globalization, and inflation targeting that solved past crises. The Fed's reputation and ideology are on the line, but few are willing to discuss the huge downside risks. Instead, a recent Kansas City Federal Reserve paper suggests that governments and central banks can coordinate on either a safe debt regime or a risky debt regime, with the former being more likely if interest rates remain low and quantitative easing continues. Token surge ahead of Super Bowl Nvidia earnings. The market capitalization of artificial intelligence and big data cryptocurrency projects and tokens has surged by 79.7% over the past 3 weeks, reflecting renewed confidence among crypto investors ahead of tech giant Nvidia's highly anticipated second quarter earnings report. The total market cap of artificial intelligence and big data crypto projects had recorded a yearly low of $18 billion on August 6th, but has since rebounded with specific tokens such as Near Protocol, Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, Bitenzor, and Render seeing gains outpace the broader crypto market over the past week. Nvidia's revenue jumped 18% between Q3 2023 and Q1 2024 and has surged 262% in the past year, with its stock skyrocketing a whopping 180% over the past 12 months. Conference Board survey signals weakest labor market since CEO VID lockdowns. Consumer confidence data from the Conference Board showed a significant upward revision in July's numbers, and August headline print was considerably better than expected. However, the overall trend remains weak, particularly in the labor market indicator, which has been languishing near CEO VID lockdown lows. Despite this, inflation expectations have decreased to pre-CEO VID levels, supporting the Federal Reserve's dovish stance. Solid 2-year Treasury auction prices at lowest yield in 2 years. The United States Treasury Department held an auction for $40 billion in 2-year notes, which resulted in strong market demand and lower yields. The auction stopped at a high yield of 3.874%, the lowest since August 2022, and down sharply from 4.434% last month. This 56 basis points drop is the biggest since December's recession scare, but despite this, some analysts believe it may be a false start. The internals of the auction showed indirect bidders taking 69.0%, while direct bidders took 19.1%, and dealers were left holding 11.9%. Overall, this was a solid 2-year auction that helped push 10-year yields lower towards 3.83%. Goldman cuts oil price target by $5 to $70 to $85 just as sentiment hits all-time low. Goldman Sachs commodity analyst Daan Struyven slashed his expected range for Brent oil prices by $5 to $70 to $85 per barrel, citing weaker Chinese oil demand, high inventories, and rising United States shale production. The bank expects oil prices to decline only modestly in 2025 due to higher United States supply and lower China demand growth, but warns of downside risk to prices and upside risk to volatility. Morgan Stanley also recently revised its oil price forecast downward, anticipating that the crude oil market will remain tight through the third quarter before stabilizing in the fourth quarter and potentially moving into a surplus by 2025. Why is Jerome Powell suddenly so dovish? Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell delivered his 2024 Jackson Hole speech, which was scored as his most dovish in nearly 3 years. United States dollar the most below 200-day in more than 1 year. The United States dollar index DXY has been trading within the same range since late 2022, nearing the low of the range and the significant 100 level. The 200-day moving average is currently trading without a clear trend, while the relative strength index RSI is at its most oversold level since last summer. China lower for longer. The CSI 300 index is approaching the panic low seen earlier this year, and its gap versus the Standard & Poor's 500 index is extremely wide. 3-rate stress charts we are watching becomes 3-rate stress charts we are watching. Interest rates have decreased significantly since mid-July, but the financial strain caused by these low rates is increasing.